Everybody's so driven for success. Our mindset is to be champions, and I think to emphasize that weight more, and that's what we're doing. Building a standard here. That's what we've been focusing on.
1, 2, 3, let's go!
Well, back again with a lot of things going on with this Washington Commanders team. OTA schedule came out, and no better person than one of my favorite people to bring on in Jason Campbell. Being that we're going to talk about the quarterback a lot, Jason, with Jayden Daniels. And I know from the start, when the draft was happening, before the draft, you said that this was the quarterback that you wanted for the Commanders to draft. Why did you want Jayden Daniels, and why did you think that he was the right fit?
Well, you look at today's game, the game has changed so much. Back in the day when I played, if you ran too much, they try to stop you from running. They wanted you to be more of a pocket guy. But now they want you to utilize your athleticism and your ability to put a threat to the defense to make them have to cover all angles. And I think when you think about Jayden Daniels, of course, covering Auburn, we played LSU last year, and this guy was a guy that I saw him make tremendous strides over his 2 years at LSU. Like how he got from progression 1 to 3, within the pocket. And then he ran when he had to run. It was not just like he drops back, he just looks to take off running, but he's a guy that looks to get the ball to his receivers first. And then if the opportunity presents itself, he would take off. And that was just an added weapon. And I said, that's the maturity of a quarterback over time that you've seen, evaluate. He's similar to Lamar. Lamar is a guy that, that could do some of those same things in college. The only difference is I think Jayden Daniels coming out of college is a better passer than Lamar was coming out of college at the time. Now, Lamar has developed to a really good passer, but coming out of college at the same time, I think Jayden Daniels is just a little bit further ahead in his passing ability.
Hey, Coach Kingsbury, being that Daniels was with the rookies and then now he's with the veterans and OTAs, he talked about Daniel's mindset, the maturity that he comes in. This guy already has a plan in what he wants to do in watching film, in the playbook, how he practiced. That's what has impressed the coaches a lot. I'm going to let you hear what Kingsbury has to say about Daniel.
He does intentional. He has a plan for studying, has a plan for practice, has a plan for watching film. Like he knows what he wants to be and where he wants to go. And to be that young and come in there with that mindset is really encouraging.
But being a quarterback coming in as a rookie yourself, Jason, what are some of the key things that Daniels should be focused on, with getting with the veterans, the playbook, and just being a rookie with new coaches? I mean, it's new coaches for him coming in no matter what. But just being a rookie coming in and going to be the starters, what are key things that you think that he needs to focus on that is going to be important in him jump starting and moving quickly?
Yeah, the thing for Jayden is, first of all, you went through minicamp with the rookies. So that's the opportunity for you to get the cadence down, just get the verbiage out of used to spitting out these plays. NFL plays are a lot longer than college plays, especially nowadays because they go so fast in college. Now, NFL, you're not in and out of the huddle so fast. You're not doing so much no huddle. So learning how to be within that huddle and how to just spit out the verbiage so that everyone knows that you're in command of the offense. That's the first thing I would say. And then the next thing is don't try to, impress the vets too much by trying to do too much. Like you've gotten to this point to be the second overall pick because of your ability and your talents. Like let your work ethic that you continue. That's all I heard about at LSU was how hard he worked. After practice, before practice, the time that he put in. Continue to do those things, and the vets will see that. They'll see the work that you're putting in. They'll see the time that you're putting in, and then they would gravitate towards you and everything. But I would just say in practice, just as much as he can, just continue to just, allow himself to make those mistakes when those mistakes happen so that he can have an opportunity to correct them. But, I would just say most importantly is just when you spit out those plays, Donna, really fast and they're like, oh, this guy's been studying. Like when the guy lined up in the wrong place and you say, hey, you need to get to the other side. Guys see that And then they started to say, okay, he's putting in the work not only on the practice field, but he's paying attention in the meeting rooms, and he's watching film at home.
Well, you're talking about, the mentoring and all of that. Kingsbury and Dan Quinn talked about the mentoring. Even Sam Cosby talked about, even from the defensive side. And I'll let you hear what he had to say as far as Sam about, he was in a stance, and Bobby Wagner, Sam thought that he was disguising the play. And Bobby Wagner read it out, and he said, I thought I was disguising that. And he said it was great because he went back and asked Bobby Wagner, what was I doing wrong? And he said it was his stance that gave it away. So that veteran leadership with some of the players that they brought in for this Commanders team is what I think is going to help this team, and the energy too.
It's important to be around the guys and build those relationships, and not only with the players but coaches as well. That's one thing I really look forward to, is that we have a open communications player to coach, which I think is huge. We're all here trying to work towards the same goal, which is winning. And so if we were able to communicate across the building, not only offensively but defensively, like today, for example, I'm in my three-point stance and I'm pulling, and Bobby Wagner goes, hey, watch, he's pulling. I'm like, what the heck? How did the heck? I was trying to disguise that. And I went up to him, hey, what'd you see? You were leaning, stuff like that. It's great. So little things like that. So yeah, that's things that I'm noticing and enjoying.
Just talk about just the veterans that they brought in here. That's going to help all phases of this team, because Kingsbury and Quinn talked about building this team around what they've got. It is what it is, but I think that they were smart in how they were putting the pieces together for this team. They knew that they couldn't get all the players at one time, but some of the key players like the Bobby Wagners, that's going to help the people on the offensive side of the ball. Just talk about what they said about the, building this team, about what they had. They're still putting the pieces together and making everybody better. And I think that's what has not happened in the past, is that you've got what you've got, but you've got to make them better. And it's ways to do that.
Yeah, I think the huge part was getting Bobby. Of course, he's a longtime veteran, but he's a champion. He's someone that's won a Super Bowl, not too long ago. He knows what it's like to compete and have to play at a high level. And I think that's something he can pass on to the younger guys. So when a veteran like Bobby walks into the locker room, instantly there's credibility. This guy has been doing it for so many years. And, you have to be a sponge if you're a young person and soak up so much knowledge that he's trying to give you, because you don't know if Bobby's going to play beyond 1 year or 2 years in Washington. So, get all the information you can get from him. It's kind of like a London Fletcher. London was one of those veteran guys who knew how to win, played on the Super Bowl with the Rams, that can pour into these young guys. So I just think for Jayden, and I think for a lot of these guys, like even Terry's got to be excited. He has to be super pumped about having a guy like Jayden at quarterback, because, it's going to have to eliminate those double coverages that he draws. And because you do have to pay attention to the RPO game now. And I think that's what Jayden brings to the table, is when you got the run pass option and that this guy can keep it and he can go from 10 to 50 yards really quick. Right. Those safeties got to come from deep depth and come down inside the box just to be ready for the RPO game, just to play Jayden. And from that aspect, but just overall though, defensively, I think this defense needed someone like Bobby. They needed someone that's a proven leader that, hey, can get in the huddle and say, hey guys, tell guys, can fix things on the field. He's another coach away from the sideline. So, I think he's going to help this young secondary. And I think Emmanuel can really pay dividends from him being around him, because why? He was behind Richard Sherman. I mean, he was around Richard Sherman. And, and those guys, when they had big, tall corners, when he played for Seattle. So he knows what that's supposed to look like. So he can help a young guy in his position as well. So I'm excited to see this D-line with Bobby playing behind it, because, if you're paying those guys, like you're drawing double teams, that allows Bobby to just free. That's what happened when he was in Seattle. That's why he was so great in Seattle. So I think he's going to be behind a really good defensive line that's going to allow him to get back to some of those days that hit with the Seahawks.
And then Frankie Louvu and all of those other players that they did. But it's funny that you mentioned Emmanuel Samuels, because I'm sorry, Emmanuel Forbes. I don't know why I must want Emmanuel Samuels, but Emmanuel Forbes, yeah, you mentioned him, and in talking with him this week, he talked about the coaching staff and learning the ins and outs about being a corner. That's where I think the coaching staff is key to, with all the people that they brought in, and they brought in some key names, Jason, that's going to really jumpstart both the defensive and offensive side of the ball. But Forbes talked about just the coaching, that teaching the ins and outs of being a corner, and the small details. That is so important with what they put in place, because the coaching staff, the message is clear. It's a different feel. Their message about making this team better, what they expect out of this team, and it's no wondering where they're coming from, because they're clear in their message of what they want this team to be. But just talk a little bit about the coaching and how key that is for this team and the people that they have brought in. And it's like an old school mentality in the classroom, Jason, because at OTAs so far, they're on hands teaching. It's not in the classroom where you go in the film room and point out different things, but they're pointing that stuff out right there when it's happening. Coach Quinn is on the field. I've never seen a head coach be so active in participating in a practice where he's hands-on. He's running out there with the players, showing them what they did wrong, and don't have to wait to go back into the classroom. Kingsbury is out there also doing the same thing. So it's old school type coaching where they're pointing out things, and that's what has impressed me so far.
Yeah. Well, it's attention to details. It goes to tell you that they're not trying to skip over the details just to try to get so many plays in. They want to make sure that the guys are understanding why they're calling certain plays, why they're trying to get in certain defenses. It's not just we're just looking at a piece of paper and calling out something, and then hope it works. These guys believe in their plan. They believe that it can work. I mean, you look at Dan Quinn, he's coached in the Super Bowl. He's been a defense coordinator for Super Bowl teams, so this guy knows how to win. He still gets a lot of flack for that 29-3, whatever it was in Atlanta. But man, how many guys can say they coached in the Super Bowl? How many teams have a Super Bowl coach as their head coach in the last 10 years that's seen a Super Bowl in the last 10 years or been to one? It's not many. So, I think Washington should be, excited if they have someone like a Dan Quinn that's in the recent memory has been to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, Jason. And also, I think he's learned from what he did before in Atlanta and all his other experiences, that this time around, he's taken things that he knows that he needs to do better, this time. So I think you've got to give him a pass. I was looking at first about this. I don't know if this is the right coach, but what I'm seeing right now, they got logs out there, Jason, like lumberjack logs, with the offensive and defensive line picking up those almost like that they're the opponents. So it's a new spin to what they're doing out there. I'm talking about, all I'm hearing from everybody and seeing on the field is the energy that's out there, the energy that this team is bringing, and the hope that that the coaching staff is bringing. So that's what I'm seeing, is all these new twists. When did you have a log that you all had out there, this big log that, that was the opponents? I've never seen that before.
Now, we didn't have a big log. I know Jim Zorn tried to bring out a slip and slide and almost tore my knee up, trying to slide, and the cleat got caught in it.
Smart in that.
But I would say he's trying to, if you look at overall, I think he's trying to change the era. This is a new ownership, new general manager. Everything is new. Last year was kind of like a rookie year for everybody. This the second year, you see they go and hire people in position that's used to, drafting guys and developing guys, and kind of have an understanding of knowing what it takes to develop young players, instead of trying to go win the prize by grab some big time name in the free agency and overpaying them, pour more into your younger guys and build your team inside out. And I think that's what they're starting to do. And you saw the energy level day one with the rookie minicamp. When I saw that, I said, oh yeah, they're really trying to change the whole format. And then
it was like training camp. It was almost like we were in the midst of training camp getting ready for the season.
Yeah, and that's what it's going to take. It's going to have to take that because you're trying to catch up with Dallas. You're trying to catch up with Philly. New York. I feel like Washington's a little ahead of New York when it comes to from talent level and everything. But you're trying to catch these guys in a division. And Dan has been on Dallas team, so he knows what it takes to beat Dallas. He knows I'm gonna have to have a high energy guys to beat Dallas. He knows I'm gonna have to have high energy guys to beat Philly. Their roster stacked. So he understands what it's take to be win within the division. But the whole thing is everything's got to be new. Everybody's got to buy in. You got to let the past go. You got to let, all the history and different things as far as like, hey, we're trying to be the guys to be like another group. No, you got to create your own identity. And I think that's what Dan Quinn is trying to do. He probably learned from the Atlanta days. Like I said, his Atlanta days, they was very, on offense, they put up a lot of points, of course, with Shanahan and everything. And defensively, though, they had a really good year of taking away the ball. And I think he wants to understand, like, in order to take away the ball, it starts in the mind first. So that's what he's trying to do with that defense to get used to taking away the ball. And offensively, that's why you go get Cliff Kingsbury. Let him run the offense. That's not his thing. Like, when he went to the Super Bowl, he had Shanahan's offense coordinator. So he's like, okay, Kingsbury, offense is your thing. You run the offense. This defense, it's under my control.
And Joe Witt that he's bought from Dallas. So, I think everything that they did was to jumpstart quickly. But the players talked about also the coaches' willingness to listen to them also in what they're seeing. And I know that Kingsbury, Dan Quinn, and all of those guys said that when we talked to them from day one, is that the willingness to listen to the players is not always about what they've got already written up, because sometimes the players seeing things on the field could kind of like come back and say, well, I think let's try this, because I know Andy Reid does that a lot in Kansas City. So I thought that was key in what the players said, although Kingsbury said we'll listen and everything and take everything in to see what we're going to do. But they're bringing some of that college mentality of how they do things and all the NFL stuff to the mix and everything. To me, is working, where they've got the players really buying in early. Well, anybody will buy in when they've been losing forever.
Right, exactly. And on top of that is you got to adapt or fall to the side. And they're understanding that, there's change. You got to change it. I'm in this college world where I help out with NIL and stuff, and everyone wants to be so against and everything. I was just like, guys, it's not going anywhere, So it's either you get on board, learn how to adapt to the change with the kids, the families, the agents, and where the college landscape is now. It's the same way in the NFL. You can't tackle the same way you used to 10 years ago. Like there's a new rule out this year. You can't drop hip tackle anymore. Defensive guys are like, okay, can't hit high, you can't hit low. How am I supposed to get a guy down? So now you got to adapt again. You already can't touch guys past 5 yards. You can be physical as you want within 5, but after 5, you can't. So the reason is for that. Offense sell tickets. People want to see touchdowns. They want to see games. The NFL knows that. And what they did, they cater it for offenses to be more successful. That's why quarterbacks, you should easily throw for 4,000 yards now. You have 17 games. You have 17 games in a season, and they can't play defense the way they used to. So
Jason, you were in the wrong era, because
I was in the wrong era. I would have loved this era. Like, I would have loved this era just for them just to let me run RPO games, and everything, instead of saying, no, we want you running. But I would have loved this era just from the simple fact that no one's riding your receiver 15 yards down the field when a flag should be called. So it gives these guys an opportunity to run freely, get open. And if the offense, like you can easily throw for 4,000 yards, 4,500 yards, 30 touchdowns or more. It's built for you to be successful. And for as a defense, you really have to be really good defensively in order to keep up with offenses nowadays. Like, you got to have a great defensive end. You got to have some D tackles. You got your D tackles in Allen and Payne, and then you got to have guys that can go and get the ball when it's in the air. That's because it's a passing league. And then I think from offensively, you got to be able to, you still got to run the ball successful. You look at the 49ers, they make it all the way to the Super Bowl. Even when Brock Purdy sputtered in the first playoff game, they were still able to overcome because they still played with physical. So you can't get too far away from the physical aspect of running the football either. So sometimes this league gets too pass happy, where they want to put everything or let the quarterback just do everything. But you can't forget, man, there's some really good guys that can run the ball, and some defenses that don't like being physical.
Well, one thing about it is the offensive line said that they hope they run the ball. They've got a good backfield. And Dan Quinn and the coaching staff said that they want to build this team with the strengths they've got, looking at what they've got, and then going from there, and making this team what they can. Because, Jason, when we talk about the schedule came out and we're talking about the strength of the schedule and where this team falls, let's go right there and talk about this, because schedule came out for this Washington Commanders, and where they failed last year as far as their wins, losses, probably helped them a little bit. But when I look at the schedule, they start off on the road against Tampa Bay. Then they played the Giants at Cincinnati, and everybody is going to look at Cincinnati as a drop-off last year, and there's a lot of injuries with Joe Barrows and that group. But a year before that, they were right there competing, with everybody else, Super Bowls, the playoffs. They were at the top of their game, just not last year. And then they go to Arizona. Let's talk about those first few games to start the season. How do you see this playing out for this Commanders in how they start and the teams that they face right off the bat?
Well, it's definitely I say competitive from a standpoint of you got games you can win there. Like Tampa is kind of trying to, yes, they went to the playoffs, but they're still trying to kind of revamp. It's not like they won 10, 12 games and everything. But, Baker got the new contract. So, he's going to be out to try to prove everybody that he deserves that $100 million contract. So, it's going to be a tough sled to play Tampa the first game. But I think that's a game that Washington can win. I really do. I think they can win that game. The Giants, I think that's another winnable game. Even though Washington struggled with the Giants over the last couple of years, it seemed like they've been the only team that the Giants have success against. And but
hey, Jason, they got their quarterback woes in New York. Right. That's a team to me that didn't improve in the draft.
Right. No, they didn't improve in the draft, and then they paid Daniel Jones before they should have. They hit the panic button, and all of a sudden, now you look at their roster, you lose Saquon. Like Saquon was a huge loss for them.
Yes.
And everything. Then you lost him to your arch rival at that. So, the Giants is in Dayball is in a year to prove it, or he's probably going to have to be looking for another job next year. And then you talk about Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. Cincinnati is a tough team. I don't care what everybody says. If they re-sign
Cincinnati,
right, they re-sign Higgins, that's a tough game in Cincy with a healthy Burrow. That one can be really tough.
On a Monday night too, Jason. Monday
night. So, it gives you the extra day to prepare, but still though, like that's a hard place to go and win. And then you got Arizona. Arizona's a team that kind of came along towards the end of the year when Kyler Murray started playing and making plays and everything.
When he got out of his own way, Jason.
Right. Yep. So they came along. So with his maturity, continue to advance. So those two games for me, the Cincy and the Arizona game, if they could split those games and go 3-1 in that first window, that'd be all for a great start for Washington.
And then the Cleveland Browns, they played Cleveland at Baltimore. After that, Carolina Panthers and Chicago Bears. Woo, that's a stretch right there, a hard stretch, because Cleveland, everybody, Cleveland had their hiccups last year. They were projected to be better than what they are, but they're a good team too. And we can't say anything about the Baltimore Ravens. Just fell apart, in the playoffs, but we know what the Ravens have because they made their team better. And it seems like during the draft, they always have a strong draft. And then the Carolina Panthers still trying to find themselves. But the Chicago Bears, to me, is going to be a team that everybody better watch out for this year. And that's going to be a key matchup between the number one draft picks and quarterbacks.
Yeah, I like that second window. It's very competitive. Anytime you play the AFC North, it's a competitive division. It's kind of like the old NFC East, what it used to be like back in the day. That's a tough division. When you think about, like I said, Cleveland, you get Deshaun Watson back. Last year they was able to get Flacco off the couch and make it to the playoffs.
And he needs to go back on the couch.
So, so now imagine, Watson having a full year and say he's healthy and everything. Like that's an opportunity. That's going to be a tough game. They also have really good defense. But when you think about after Cleveland, Baltimore, that's going to be, shadow one and then playing the guy that's trying to be your shadow too, which I mean Lamar as the one, and then Jayden Daniels as the two. The guy that everyone hopes that he turns out to be like in Lamar. That's going to be a fun game. You got two quarterbacks that can run the RPO system, two quarterbacks that was compared to each other in the draft, and guys that are both in the Beltway. So
Get your popcorn out.
right. That's going to be a fun one to watch. And then you talk about Chicago. Chicago to me is a very interesting game. Like you said, you got the number 1 pick versus number 2 pick, but then you also got Chicago, who's a team that's saying, "Hey, we built everything around. Now we just need that guy, Caleb Williams, to if he can read the defense and make the accurate throws. You get Keenan Allen that came over from Chargers. I don't know how they let him go, but he's in Chicago. So that's going to be a game that you get some film on Caleb. You get 4 games to watch him before you get 5 games to watch him before you get a chance to play him. So who did I miss in that window?
Yeah, well, no, Chicago, that's what we were talking about. That was that window. And the thing that makes Chicago so dangerous, they got better. They've got the running game. They got another wide receiver that they drafted, already had wide receivers, but they started building their defense last year with Montez Sweat paying him, but they built around him and they got so much better on the defensive side. So that to me is a complete team. And like you say, Caleb Williams, it's going to be dependent on how he comes out as the quarterback for the Chicago. And down the home stretch, you've got back at the New York Giants, Pittsburgh, the Eagles, Dallas, Tennessee.
Ooh, man, the Eagles, Dallas, that's the tough one. You get them back to back. Of course, the Dallas matchup always gonna be intriguing this year because the Dan Quinn, how much he knows about Dallas, how much does he know about Dak and the offense, and everything. How much does Dallas?
And Red is with the Commanders and some of their players.
Yep. So it's just a lot of, that's gonna be a chess game, like a whole chess match game. Then you talk about the Eagles. How did the Eagles respond from last year? You go to the Super Bowl, and then last year you kind of, you start off hot, and then you just kind of just fall apart on the second part of the season. So, what kind of team would the Eagles look like with a new offensive coordinator this year?
Mm-hmm.
Will Jalen Hurts come back to the Jalen Hurts that went on the Super Bowl run? So that's going to be, intriguing game. But then you talk about going to New York. Always been a tough game going to New York. It doesn't matter if they're 3-13, if they're 1-10. It's always hard to play in New York later in the year because it's so windy. And that's a game, Donna, that you got to be able to run the football and play great defense. Because you don't know what the weather's going to be like.
And then you got Pittsburgh and Tennessee.
Pittsburgh, to me, it's going to be a lot better than people think.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson got a chip on his shoulder. I think he's in a better situation. I think he has a better surrounding cast. He has a defense he can play with. Anytime he's played with a defense, he's been very successful. So I think that's a team is that game in Pittsburgh or Washington?
That game is in Washington.
Well, I like that game in Washington for them. So I can see that could be a game that Washington could upset Pittsburgh at home. Tennessee, how will Will Levy play this year? Everything's going to be based around his second year as the position quarterback.
The running back is gone. How do you let him go?
So I like Washington in that game. So there's some tough stretches. That second stretch and that last stretch, if Washington go 2-2, I think those are 2 stretches that are either going to let them make the playoffs or have them on the outside looking in.
It's going to be a telltale because it's some strong games in there. And then they finish it. They got the bye week, and then they finish up at the Saints, Philadelphia again, Atlanta, and then at Dallas to finish the season. So, everybody looks at this schedule as, this is winnable. But to me, when you look at this schedule, it is tough as nails.
All right. And you can't just look at every year the NFL is different. Like sometimes, guys will have a hot year, then next year they may not be so hot. But then teams like Atlanta, you go get Raheem Morris. He's a really good defense coordinator. Their defense is going to be better. Offensively, they got Kirk Cousins. So you can't look at Atlanta as the Atlanta last year. Atlanta, you got to look at them like a playoff team.
And Kurt is mad because they draft the quarterback. He's like, what? You paid me a lot, and then you're going to draft – are you trying to tell me something? So he's
Right.
got something to prove.
Right. So he's got something to prove. Same reason he left Minnesota was the same reason and then Atlanta turned around and did the same thing to him. So Kurt's got something to prove, but they got veterans there. They got guys that, they're explosive offensively. So Atlanta won't be the same. And then you look at, Eagles are going to be better. Like Dallas is always a tough game, but Pittsburgh is not Pittsburgh last year, and even not the Pittsburgh the year before that. And everyone knew their offense was just miserable. It's not going to be that way. So you can't look at. Sometimes it hurts you, Donna, when you're playing people that just got a whole bunch of new, and they went out and they said, okay, how do we get guys to make sure we're not in position next year? So you don't know what kind of team that team's going to have next season. It actually goes against you sometimes. And so Washington definitely better not look at the schedule and just say, oh, it's a winnable schedule. There's a lot to prove within that schedule.
I'm listening to people early on talking about the schedule, and to me, it's a dangerous schedule. When you look at these teams they've got new coaches, new quarterbacks, and I have hope that this Commanders team also is going to be better. They didn't get to put all the pieces together. I still thought the offensive line didn't get addressed enough, but I thought that they put some key personnel in place, and just the player personnel in looking at other teams. And before it's all said and done, we could see some more changes happen to this team. But I'm confident with this new coaching staff of where their direction that they're taking this team. I don't know how. I know that this team probably will be better than they have over the last 3 or 4 years. How much better, I don't know. I don't like to predict the schedules early to say this one fan told me during the draft, oh, the Commanders are going to be 10 wins. I said, ooh, you jumping ahead of yourself. I said, because that's what they've done. But I'm not going to even ask you how you see this schedule as the predicting, because I just think it's too hard, and we're still trying to learn this Commanders team right now.
Yeah, I think the first things first is win your division.
Yes.
Like focus
something
on your.
They ain't done in a long time.
Yeah, focus on your division. You focus on winning your division, then everything else takes care of itself. Like everyone always say, man, you look at the schedule, you never know that injuries play a big part of the season. You don't know what injuries going to look like during the season for any team. A lot of teams start off slow and they get hot late in the season. So there's just different parameters that you have to look at, and just unpredictable. Everyone thought the Chiefs had fell off a little bit last year in their early part of the season, in the middle of the season. Everyone's talking about, oh, they can't do this offensively no more. They can't do that. And they'll win the Super Bowl.
Patrick Mahomes wasn't the same Patrick Mahomes. I hear all that stuff, but at the end, where were they at?
Holding the Lombardi trophy. So that's the same thing as, when it comes to the Green Bay, with Love. Everyone's like, oh, in the beginning, and then towards the end of the year, they're like, oh man, this kid can play. So you just never know. And you got to be patient with a rookie quarterback. Like this is going to be Jayden Daniels' first year in the NFL. Yes, he was the second pick in the draft, but still at the end of the day, he's learning just like everybody else is learning. And you got to be patient with him and everything. And you got to keep him upright. Like how much do you involve him in the RPO game? Because he's not a big dude that's going to scare you physically and be like, oh man, he can survive a 17-game schedule. So he has a lot of work to do off the field as far as like eating and building more muscle mass to handle a 17-game schedule in the NFL. You saw it. So those are a lot of factors. And then with Dan Quinn, your offense has to build chemistry with your defense. You got a new defense coordinator. Yes, he's a head coach, his second go round. So that helps in a lot of ways. Cliff Kingsbury has been a head coach in the NFL, and now he's an offense coordinator. So he can help you a lot as well.
Anthony Lynn has been a head coach.
Has been a head coach. And Anthony Lynn is probably one of the better minds in pro football. Like people don't realize. I like him being able to help Kingsbury offensively. I really do. And then you talk about defensively, he bring in his, Coach Witt, someone that's been with him pretty much everywhere he's been. So someone that's going to echo everything that he says to the defense when Dan Quinn is not in those meeting rooms. And Coach Witt Jr., I know his dad. I played for his dad at Auburn. If he's anything like his dad, that defense is going to be good. Because he plays zero nonsense, type of stuff as how his dad was.
And what did you say? Zero nonsense.
Zero nonsense. So if he is anything close to his dad, I think Allen and Payne and Wagner and all those guys are really have a solid year. And Washington will have a chance, but I just say let's be patient with the team.
Yeah. And I like the fact that they said that everything is done on this team right now with purpose. And Jason, you know what? You gave us some great nuggets dropping. We had to bring you back when Tony, the big man, is back in the chair to talk about more. But we needed to put him aside because all he was going to talk about was the defense. But like I said, I like where they're going right now with the way they're putting this team together. And if training camp is anything like the OTAs, we are in for a treat because it's been hot already.
Is training camp still going to be in Richmond?
No, training camp is here in DC still this year. I think after this year, out of Ashburn, rather, after this year, it could switch. I hope it doesn't. I don't know if it goes back to Richmond. I hate that traffic. It could go somewhere else. We just don't know. But I know that they're talking about having multiple scrimmages, inter squad scrimmages. They had one with the Ravens last year. I think they want a couple this year with different teams, which I think is most helpful. But we'll see, Jason, because we've got a lot of football starting to take place before training camp. But as Tony say, we don't say goodbye. We say in the minute.
In a minute.